No one was hurt. Everything went perfect. But that is probably my only time in life that actually I get in a state of shock. A passenger told me, like, approached to me, say thanks so much for saving our life and stuff. But I was sitting next to the engine and I could see all the fire. You should check it out. And that's one of the first moment that I actually got to the place and I could see that all the engine was burned from outside, and I lost my talk, and my hands start shaking in that moment, and then the adrenaline went down, and then your life instinct come up, like you were like, shit, I could have died actually in that moment. So
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Iblis Manifestations Podcast. I'm honored to be joined by my good friend, Mr. Christopher D. Cherna, aka NecrosHorns. I'm sure that some of you who have been followers of the podcast and coexist within the underground circles and follow a similar scene may have come across some of Christopher's work, predominantly as a photographer. So he does a lot of live event photography as well as doing promo shoots for certain, namely bands within the underground, and also he has worked as an artist and a designer as well, and originally working on woodworks and doing those types of designs and such. So we got to talk a lot about all of that, but interestingly enough, my guest also used to be a pilot. So that is definitely a first for this podcast, and he used to work as a pilot back in Panama when he used to reside in that region, and there were some very interesting stories and just completely crazy perspectives that he got to share with us here on this episode. So yeah, and some of those may or may not involve certain near-death experiences. So for those of you interested, there will be some of that coming very shortly. And yeah, so we just got to talk a lot about that, arts, and general things to do with the nature of death and our journeys throughout life. We did also touch upon some of his trips to many different parts around the world, including Varanasi. So, coming shortly will be that, and as always, thank you all very much for tuning into Iblis Manifestations. If you are new to the podcast, we have a lot of conversations similar to this one, with a lot of notable names within the underground and people who I personally just find fascinating and interesting to speak to. And so if you are keen, you are more than welcome to subscribe or share the episodes, and yeah, let everyone know about it, and also let us know of your thoughts as well. Obviously, the episodes are free to consume, so any kind of support you can give us, we do very much appreciate it. Anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, let's cut straight to the chase. Please welcome NecrosHorns to Iblis Manifestations. Good evening, Christopher. How you doing, man? Welcome to Iblis Manifestations. It's an honor to finally have you on the show.
pretty good, thanks, man. Actually, the honor is mine. I've been looking for a while what you've been doing, so it's actually a really big honor for me to be here and have a good talk with you. So I'm really good. Hope the same for you, man.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm doing great. Just came back from the gym, as I mentioned earlier, so I'm just ready to finally chill out and have a normal conversation with you. Well, most normal in
Yeah,
our own
normal.
sense. Yes, we're off to a good start. But yeah, man, absolutely. I know we've been talking for a little while, so we are here now. I've been following your work for quite some time, and you've built quite a bit of a following, somewhat of an underground one, similar to like an underground band would. You almost seem to have generated following and a network of your own through doing live photography, but also doing a lot of different projects and things like that I just find fascinating. So when I see those kind of those portraits and images that just have that very much mysterious but also powerful aspect to them, I'm immediately drawn. So that I'm trying to sort of get to dig deep behind that and see what it is that's behind these photos and the work that you do. So I guess a very good place to start would be just about your background personally and what actually got you started in doing this type of photography, and what made you choose this particular path when it comes to being an artist.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a complex question because nothing was planned. Nothing was like, this is what I want to head in. This is what I'm going to do. It was just I'm the kind of person that I go with the flow. I
Mhm.
mean, I try to have like system in my life, like structure, but at the same time, I try when it comes to the creative aspect to don't push anything. So it's like what it comes is what it go what I do. Uh, so I mean, first, I always have like love for metal. I mean, yeah, kind of like underground subcultures. I mean, not only metal. I mean, I listen a lot of punk. I listen a lot of like indie rock and different things in general. And the things for I mean, but I always have my passion for metal actually. Since I was little, I got captured with the once when I saw the artwork from Iron Maiden. When I saw Eddie the first time, I was like 6 years old. I didn't even knew what was Iron Maiden, but I was like, I like that, and that's actually the way that I got into like heavy music was because the artwork of the cover of an album.
Which
So,
made an
I
album was
mean,
it?
oh, I don't remember. I don't remember. I mean, it was my uncle. He have like several vinyls of Maiden, and I can't recall right now. But it's like when I saw 80, it was like that's what I like. I
Yeah,
like it right away. And then with time, like some videos of Pink Floyd and stuff. So I got
sure.
little by little into it. Then I always, since I was little, I liked to draw. But when it came like with time with a profession, my professional career, I got completely disconnected from art. I got focused back then in university on my career, and then through years, actually, I little by little got back on track with art. And I mean, when I started NecrosHorns, actually was not even photography. Well, I mean, I always loved photography, but I never was like, I mean, camera equipment is pretty expensive. I never had the opportunity
Mhm.
to own proper equipment when I was younger. So I started NecrosHorns actually working on wood with pyrography, doing wood burning.
Sure thing.
Uh, and then the thing is, I'm always in general the kind of person that I don't like to do the same thing that other people do. I don't like to follow trends. I don't like to follow stream. I don't like to follow anything. Even when I'm inside, for example, in a metal scene, I don't really feel like I have to do things like to be part of it. I mean, I'm just who I am. So I started
Mhm.
doing necrosworms, and I thought like one day actually I started doing this wood art, and one day actually by accident I cut my hand and blood spill over over the wood, and I was like, damn, that looks pretty good. I should start painting with blood. So
Right
actually,
on.
then I put it up together. I created like I put up like I think for the first time came up something like that in the metal world for saying like this, like artwork related to metal done with pyrography. I mean on wood and painted with blood. I mean, there's been other artists before that have painted with blood. It's nothing new, but in this kind of context, it was something new. I
Mm.
started doing it like I just did it for myself. I actually my first artwork was from Abigail from Japan. I love that band, and I actually just took a photo, sent it to Yasuyuki in Japan, and he was like, "Damn, I love it." I was like, "Really? That's pretty cool." For that time, NecrosHorns the name didn't exist either. Actually, I did it just like this, and then he liked it a lot. Then second band Archgoat, third band Inquisition start growing like this, and I was like, I should create a name. And then I just choose something that have a kind of like a meaning for me. So I put up NecrosHorns, and then I thought like I didn't just want to show like a wood art on the on a photo just like with a white background or anything. So I start creating like altars, kind of like in the way like building up things together, and that's when I start putting up photography
Hmm.
little by little. I mean, honestly, my first photos were with an iPhone 4.
All
That's
right.
what I had.
Yeah.
So I started doing it like this. Then I was like, I bought another camera. I was like, and then I started learning, and I started getting better. And then I was like, why not try to actually shoot bands as well, like in concerts? So I actually start like sneaking my camera into concerts, shooting some photos, and then I was like, I started getting attention. Actually, it was like some bands started even sharing my photos, and I was like, damn it, there's like plenty of photographers there, and actually are my photos the one coming out when I have like the shittiest cameras, all of them. And then I get like festival passes. I was like, and then I started learning. I was I'm developing more and more, and I was like, damn, this is going pretty good. Then I start like investing in more equipment to the point that nowadays I focus on photography and I let the wood art behind.
Hmm.
So it's like it's not something that I plan to reach to photography. What I have done, what I'm doing today, it was just like it happened. So I mean,
Okay.
I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Honestly, I love photography. I always like it. I always wanted to do it. I didn't have the opportunity before, but now it's like, I mean, now that I'm doing it, I like it a lot. I want to continue, but to be honest, I'm not gonna push it. We'll
Sure.
see if someday I lost inspiration, I just cut it up. I mean, or if I find something that I want to focus more, I will just go with that. Because I always said to people, NecrosHorns is not about being a specific thing; it's what I feel at the moment.
Which is
So
essentially what art really is. That's what art is supposed
exactly,
to be like, right?
exactly. I always said like to the point that you start compromising your art and doing things just to please others or get attention, then I wouldn't call it anymore you're an artist, then you're a craftsman. That I feel there are two different things. Because a craftsman just
Hmm.
sit down and create something, and an artist is someone that I feel like is doing it by feelings. That for me is quite like two different contexts. I mean, for myself, it took me a long time to be able to call myself an artist. I didn't want to accept that. Other people were like, "Oh, you're a really great artist." I was like, "No, I'm not." I mean, even when I actually was doing, I were doing that, I was like, I'm not an artist." I was like, "What do you mean? What are you saying?" And I was like, "All the real artists are already dead." So it's like I was like, I don't want to get the title of Gustave Doré. I mean, it's like really. I mean, so it's like. I mean, for me, it was pretty difficult to get it. And then later, when people started calling me photographer, I was like, well, I mean, yeah, sure, I have a camera.
Hmm.
But then with time, I was like, well, yeah, I am a photographer now. It's like, so, but it took me time. I don't like to put up titles like how some people do. It's like some people buy their camera, open an Instagram, and right away they're like photographer. No,
Hmm.
it's two different things to be a photographer and be a camera owner.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
guess
like
it's
at
like
the
the same
beginning I
as
didn't want to call myself that. So
yeah, it's like the same as being some girl who calls themselves a model just because they have an Instagram account, you know. So
yeah,
if
exactly.
that
Yeah,
account
exactly.
goes away, then
Taking
so does
selfies is
the
like
yeah, exactly.
taking selfies doesn't make you a model. For myself, was like, or just because you bought a guitar, you're not a guitarist. You're just someone that owns a guitar and you're learning.
So
But it's
you're
like
about
it's
earning the title, essentially. You know, I gotta say, one thing about that that's quite special is, or one big takeaway from it is to sometimes just not think about it too much and just do it.
yeah,
And
exactly,
uh, and I think that's sometimes where a lot of the magic really happens. You know, the more that you
exactly.
do, the better that you will get, and the more that you kind of open up the portals of just channeling yourself or whatever it is that
Mm,
you've got, like that
exactly.
channeling in itself, it requires a degree of, I guess, tuning yourself to your subconsciousness or what you feel around you. But also that in itself is still a skill. Some people might inherently be stronger at that, and artists
Mm,
inarguably are far more
mm,
sensitive to things like that. But it is, at the end of the day, like pretty much every other aspect of life, it's a skill at the end of the
yeah.
day. And yeah, so that's interesting about the woodwork. I actually do remember that because I do feel that the first interaction you and I might have had, I believe it was over that, because I remember, obviously, as you said, with blood work and things like that. I mean, Maxim Takardi always comes to mind because he does a lot of
Mm,
drawings
mm,
and artwork with blood, and I'm sure there might have been others as well. But like you
mm.
said, with woodwork, that's a different thing to do it in the context that you were doing it. I think I remember maybe 3 or 4 years ago, if not longer. I think you had done one for Fields of the Nephilim, if I
Yeah,
remember
exactly. Yeah,
correctly.
exactly,
And I
exactly,
think I
exactly.
interacted with you over that one because
Mm,
I thought it was pretty cool that you had done that. And I think that
mm,
was actually you and I's first interaction, online
mm.
interaction, if you
Yeah.
will. So it's very cool. It's interesting to see how that has developed into basically what it is that you're doing now. And just for clarification as well, the response that you're getting now is so strong that you don't even have a web store. You pretty much directly communicate with your own followers, right?
Yeah, exactly. The concept of about a Webster, I mean, to be honest, it's always like simplified everything. If you only put up a web store, then you upload what you want to sell. Someone just put a click, then you wake up in the morning, you have a sell. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sounds pretty good. But then comes the part that I never really felt like I wanted to be a store. I prefer to each person that want something, have the opportunity to text to me directly, that I appreciate it, honestly, because they always have questions and stuff. So I always answer the questions instead of just sending an email and feel like customer service. I don't want to feel like that. To feel that I'm doing that. I mean, I prefer to have a personal contact with everyone because I appreciate honestly that someone likes what I do. It's like for me, it's an honor and means a lot. So I'm always like I always thanks people like, hey, thanks so much. First of all, thanks so much for your support and your interest. Doesn't matter if the person buy or doesn't or do not. I mean, uh, we engage in conversations. I have actually made friends like that. I mean, so actually, I didn't even today. I mean, I have like 12,000 plus followers on Instagram, plus what I have from Facebook, and even like that. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, answer to each person directly, but I prefer to do it in that way. Actually, um, give a personal touch to what I'm doing. I mean, so instead of just putting up like we just put up a web store, and if someone buy masses, I mean, I don't create stuff for in masses anyway. So it's like, so
So it's
it's pretty
more
cool
about
when
the
I
personal connection, I suppose, of just
exactly.
being able to put what you do out there. I mean, that's a great addition. Although I can imagine that must take a lot of time, right?
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. Sometimes you get like You get a lot of spam as well. Yeah, you get often about like my band.
Of
Whenever you
course.
don't, and I tell people like I'm pretty sorry, but it's like my time is really limited, and I don't really have time to listen all the albums that people send me. But I try sometimes. I mean, so
What is it that
uh,
people are trying to gain from you listening to their albums, do you think?
I don't know. Probably exposure.
Sure.
People want like to get the opportunity like that I shared, and then they get like uh that they get like free marketing or something like that. I don't know. Probably could be.
Mhm.
Probably I'm wrong as well. Probably people just like what I do and they feel like they want to hear my opinion. I mean, I could be wrong. Everyone have a different idea, and some people can be pure in their concept about like, please check my band. Other people can just be like, just want attention. I mean, who never knows? I mean, but yeah, it could be like that. So
I
it's
like the just
difficult.
just one attention one. I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I mean that's probably
yeah. I just don't
true
want to be
for.
completely negative.
I don't think it's negative. I don't look the way I'm looking at it is more from like a realistic point of view of like we all just want to be heard, you know, and I understand
Yeah.
that, you know, I want to be
Mhm.
heard and I want to be seen.
Yes, but you know something? Not
Yeah,
many people want to work for that.
sure, sure, that
It's
is true.
easier to tell someone, listen to my band and share it, than actually work for you to get up. I mean,
Mm,
back in the days, no social media. How was the way that you capture a crowd? You went up on stage, you give the 100%, and then people start talking. Now it's like many people want to be famous for day one, and people don't. That's the wrong concept. I feel like because you should not do something to get attention. You should do it for yourself, and then the attention will come up because you're natural.
yeah, the expression in itself is and should always be the absolute priority. I 100% agree with you on
Mhm.
that for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, not many people see it in that way, and that happens a lot with the new generations. That they want the exposure right away when they figure it out that actually it's a lot of work. That is not only like I'm gonna create something and put it outside. That you actually have a lot to do to be able to keep to keep it. I mean, happens when I was doing the wood art. It's like I after I started, I seen people start doing it as well. But then it came up like many of them after 6 months were done, and I continue. The
Mm,
difference is I was doing it not to get attention. I was doing it because I like it. They were doing it just because he's doing it and he's getting attention. I can do it as well. Many of them were better than me. Many of them probably have studied drawing or something. I haven't. I'm self-taught. So it's like, yeah, many of them probably have like more skills than what I have, but they didn't have the motivation to go and continue. And that's the
yes.
thing. That's why you see many bands, like for example, they start and then they're like disappear. Yeah, why? I mean, when they figure it
Absolutely.
out, like a lot of work. I mean, it's not only got up on stage and then you're gonna be Motley Crue and have 10,000 groupies.
Oh man,
It's a lot of
yeah.
work.
I couldn't agree more. It's like that. I've talked about this with my guys before, but with us in Trivax, we've been around. I mean, the UK lineup's been around since just the end of 2011, and that in the context of metal, whilst I guess is 11, 12 years is a long time in a person's life. In the
Mhm.
context of metal, that's nothing. That to me, a band that was born in late 90s, early 2000s is still relatively new. And
Mm.
I think because then you got to look at the big landscape of what this genre really is and what it stands for and
Mm.
its history. And even since 2011, I have seen, or we have seen rather, so many bands that we played with, so many bands that got great opportunities, all come and go. And it always makes you
Mm.
think, like, like we're not the same. You guys coming in thinking like you're gonna be hot shit overnight or whatever.
Mm.
And let's say that, yeah, you do become hot shit overnight. Then what?
Mm.
Then what plans have you got with that? Why did
Mm.
you want to get there in the first place? Did you just want the dopamine rush? Is that all you were seeking?
Exactly.
And then you can just be done with it and walk away? It's a
Mm.
different thing. I think metal and art are, these things, they require a degree of respect and sacrifice and dedication and consistency,
Or
which,
artist pain.
yeah, that's something, exactly, that's something that you have to, unless your soul is burning for you to do it, you probably shouldn't waste time doing it. And you shouldn't
Mm.
waste the time of an audience, and you shouldn't waste your own time and resources, and let the ones that really mean what they say to
Mm.
take up the space. But,
Yeah, most of
it's one of
the
them things.
most amazing artists back in the days. I mean, when I say artists in general, like writers, an example, Lovecraft, they die with almost nothing.
Yeah, that's true. Beethoven, for example.
Yeah,
There's many of them. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean, nowadays, like, nowadays, like, what they have done is like the base of what we have, and even like that, they die with nothing. I mean, Kafka, it was like, okay, it was part of like mental issues and stuff, but also it's like, I mean, if you read the diaries of Kafka, it's like it's depressive.
For sure,
They get
yeah. I think the thing with creating art is that you're essentially creating an egregore, and you're creating a portal through which your own experiences are only, there's a limit to how relevant your personal experiences are when it comes to that art, because
mm,
once that, let's say it's a song, or a piece of painting, for example. Once that's out into the ether and other human beings get to interact with it, everyone will perceive that differently, and they will connect
exactly.
with its energy in a different way. But also, they give birth to it in a different way, so that the art, from the moment that you've released it, from the moment it's been exposed to another human being, in the case of a band, I feel like that happens the moment you share a song with another member of the band. Like the meaning and the
Mm,
feeling of the song already changes.
exactly.
And I think it's that when you see that thing, that the brain waves, they somehow birth this mark with
Mm,
of the egregore with very specific frequencies into existence, and that's when art, or the piece of music or the painting or the literature, it will develop a life of its own, which basically, the job of the artist is simply to just be a vessel to create that.
exactly.
And it makes sense almost why so many artists don't really get a monetary um, reward, or a substantial one, that would come out of an experience like this, because they simply open the gates for everyone else to experience this thing. Does that make sense?
Typical example with Sigur Rós, for example, where I think there's an album that even when they have vocals, doesn't have lyrics, and actually the bootleg come out with the title of the song and space blank. So you put the lyrics of what you feel that it should be there.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like a
So
musical
even actually when
coloring book.
he's exactly, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
because actually you have the sound and stuff for everyone to create a different feeling what they are actually expressing. So actually, uh, so it's pretty cool that they put it up in that way. So actually, you put up your own lyrics of what you think that it should be written.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. What do you so between all of the different stuff that you've done, from watching all of the different bands, and obviously doing all of the creative stuff that you've done, as well as all of the traveling, which we will get into, what do you think are some of the common lessons that you've been able to absorb from all of them? Because you've seen, like, literally some of the best bands in the underground, like whether it's
Mm,
Niflheim, or whether it's
mm,
Watain, or whether it's Miss Thermi. You've seen some truly powerful live bands.
mm.
So, what have you learned from, like the middle point of all of these things that you have at least artistically been involved with?
Stay humble,
Right
because
on.
doesn't matter. now that you mentioned Niflheim, for example, something that the first time that I saw Niflheim was maybe like 10 years ago, and it was touring with Vulcano
Yeah.
from Brazil. And actually, part of a really interesting thing, I talked with, I met Eric Tyrant
Mm-hmm.
after one of the concerts, and I was like, "That's really cool. It was a pretty good concert and stuff." We talked a little, and then he said like, "Yeah, you know something, but there is something wrong there. We shouldn't be the headliners. Vulcano should be the headliners." I was like, "What do you say?" Like, I was like, "Dude, Vulcano is a legend." I was like, "Yeah, but you as well." I was like, "Yeah, but it's Vulcano." So
I
I
love
mean,
that.
that that
Yeah.
kind of attitude. I mean, even when they were headliners, when Vulcano was playing, they were the Twins were in the front row headbanging to Vulcano,
Yes.
and they told
Yeah.
me every single concert of the tour they were in the front row. That's something
Yeah.
that I respect a lot because it's like you're the headliner, and even like that to the band that is opening for you, you're like you're there. So it's like, and I saw them also doing that for Roots, the Czech band as well. So I think I think the biggest lesson that I have got on all this is like even when I mean metal is a really powerful genre of music. You show a lot of energy. You show like to you're under control on stage. It's being kind of aggressive as well. I mean, even like that, you notice when someone is humble or someone is up there just to get praise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you see the difference, like, and that's was something that I have learned. That is like when someone is doing it because they love to be on stage, they love what they're doing, and then you really see the difference between a band that is doing it because they like it and a band that is doing it because they are making money. So I think that's what I have learned the most in all these years. I mean, I lost count of how many concerts I've been with so many festivals and yeah, working with so many bands. And then when you meet the people as well, there are some bands that nowadays, even when there were bands from my childhood, I can't listen anymore because when I met the person, I was like, "Ah, what a
Mm.
waste."
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that's actually what I have learned mostly, like of in general, like being humble. Doesn't matter how big you get.
And I guess a good way to put that would be to you want to look for those who want the praise and the energy to go towards appreciation of their art rather than me. I guess that's kind
Exactly.
of what you're saying, isn't it? Yeah,
Exactly,
that's
exactly. Like
interesting.
instead of being on stage, like look at me, look at me, look at me, or something like that. It's like and feeling ego.
Hmm.
I mean, I always say ego is your worst enemy
Ego
because
is
that
your
will
worst
destroy
enemy.
you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
It's
you see,
also the
you
thing
really
that
see the difference.
drives a lot of people to do incredible things. Like it's because of ego that some of the best things in this world exist. I think even probably in the realm of art, and I guess it's not, I don't know if this is ego in the sense of I'm the greatest, because you can look at Metallica, for example, right? When you look at those first few albums, there is that ego, I guess, of like
Mm,
we just want to kick everyone's ass. But that same ego, I guess, 10 years later is like, well, we're really good. We don't have to try that hard.
mm.
So it's a very much a double-edged sword as far as I am concerned. But yeah,
Yeah,
I can.
but in the moment that you think that you're the best at something, is in the moment you start going downhill.
That's the moment you fucked up. Absolutely, man. Yeah, never. You should never be content with yourself. And that's one
Mm,
thing as well. Like criticism is not something that I have never dealt with it too harshly, if I'm honest. But it's one of them things that when I have dealt with it, it doesn't do a lot for me because I am already my own harshest critic. And it's
mm.
like I already
Yeah.
put myself through hell. Like I wake up and I have to jump in a cold bath, and if I don't do it, I'll call
Mm,
myself a pussy. And obviously, I don't want to be called a pussy, so I just
mm.
fucking jump in the bath. So it's like this is what I do to myself, and it's like it's the same with art as well. Also, just to quickly take a step back as well to your point earlier, fucking Volcano's 1986 Bloody Vengeance is one of the fucking pinnacle albums of
Mm,
black and death metal, period. They were fucking
mm.
sick. And I do actually know of the tour that you mentioned they did with Niflheim. I didn't get to go to it, but friends of mine who did, because I think they actually, I think if I'm correct, they did actually play the UK on that one too. Friends of mine who did
I
said
mean, they
that
did
they
plenty
were
of
sick.
tours. I mean,
Yeah.
not that I'm talking, unfortunately, not about the Thunder Metal tour. I was not
Okay,
around
sure.
here back then. I mean, it came a little bit later, the one that I got to see. But yeah, and saying about Volcano, I mean, for me, it's like it was a really huge honor that actually my photos were in the latest album of them.
That's killer.
So I was like, for me, it was like when they sent me the album and I got to open it, I was like, my photos are there, damn it.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. I love Volcano, so it's like, and they're amazing people actually. So it's like, yeah, it was some kind of like a big like I like trio for me. Like I put a stamp there. I put my name in one of their albums, not in the early ones, unfortunately, but still, it's Volcano.
It is Volcano. Fuck yeah, man. That's cool as fuck. I bet it must feel great to have that sort of connection with bands like that. Or like I know that, for example, some of the photography used for Cult of Fire got
Mm.
used up as well. I think in our Friends magazine, V Omega, I think that's where they used
Mm.
it, and that was some like really killer shots. How does it feel?
Actually, for that time, I was the director of photography and music for the magazine. Actually, when that happened,
Oh, okay,
I
sure.
used to work for a while with VMega.
All right, fantastic.
Mm.
Yeah, how does it feel when you have that kind of sort of connection with a band in that sense that your work becomes a part of their piece of projection into the world?
It feels really good because in a way, like I only work with what I like. I'm not gonna work with something that I don't like in general. I mean, I don't shoot bands that I don't like because I always says the camera shoot two ways. It's not only what is captured, it's also capture. It's also shoot what you want to express. So to be honest,
Interesting.
I need a connection with what I'm shooting.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter if it's a photo session. Doesn't matter if it's a live concert. I mean, to be honest, I happens many times. I'm in the front row shooting photos and I'm headbanging at the same time because I fucking like it.
Right
So it's
on. I
like
like that.
so it's like or I will with like trying to focus shooting and with the other hand like yay. So it's
Yes.
like
Nice.
I mean I like it. So for me it feels pretty good when I managed to capture as well. Like I put her up like a photo session, for example, with Cool of Fire is kind of like a collaboration of what they want to express with what I want to express, even when actually is their work mostly. I mean, is there to promote their work, not mine.
Mm.
I mean, so it feels amazing actually that we managed like to get that connection and put her up. I mean, the photo session that I did for them in the cave. I mean, it was Tom, the ex drummer, that he thought about me because he told me we have plenty of photos from our concerts, but you always manage to capture an angle completely different than someone else. So I
Hmm.
really like. I don't know how you do it. I don't know what crossed your mind, but you capture something like, like for example, the guitarist behind the candles in an angle, so not focus completely on the person. I mean, you manage to capture an atmosphere. So it's like and that's something that I always says. Like, I mean, to be honest, what is the point to capture like what everyone else is trying to do? I mean, I try to capture the energy of the atmosphere of the event. So actually, so in that way, it's like it feels really good that they actually see it as well through my photos, and wants to go a step further, like to create something. I mean, at the end, I did the photo session in the cave for them that it was in Czech Republic, and that was used for the live album that they released there. Also, some of my live photos were in the VHS that they released.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, in that concept, it feels pretty good actually to manage to collaborate in that way. I always tell people, if you look up for me, you're looking for what I do as well. I mean, I know it's your work, what you want to promote, but you're looking for me because you already seen what I do. Don't tell me shoot like other photographer because I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can give me ideas. You can tell me like this is the kind of colors that I want. This is the kind of thing that I want. Yes, but don't tell me to be someone else because then I will tell you go with that person.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly what makes it unique about what you do as well. Just like you said earlier, you don't like to do what other people do. You like to carve your own path, do things your own way. So if someone comes to
Mm.
you, they're coming to you because they want your style of photography. I can fully appreciate that. And you know what? This is something that, especially maybe in the later years, maybe like in the last 4 or 5 years, I've realized from an artistic perspective that as a musician, yes, you know how to write the riffs, you know how to present on stage, you know how to do all these things. But when it comes to being a photographer or a videographer or someone who creates artwork, that's a person who's dedicated their whole life to doing that. So maybe they're going to have a better idea of some things than you would.
Mm.
So if the style matches, then just give them a rough idea and just let them work. Let someone work, because artistically, the more someone tells you to do something, the less passionate you feel about what you're doing, and the more
Exactly, exactly.
constrained you are. So you can't really fully execute as best as you can when you're under those restrictions.
Yeah, it kills the feeling completely. Actually, to be honest, when I start working with something, I never even have a proper idea of what I'm going to do. I just like to go with the flow. Typical example, the last photo session from Unscap that I did. Uh, they just told me a little bit like here and there what they wanted. We got to the place, and I was like, "Do you mind if we do like this, like this?" And they were like, "You just tell us what to do because if we are hiring you to do this to shoot the session is because we trust what you want your vision." I was like, well, I appreciate it. Then I have full freedom. Yes, okay, let's do it like this. Stand here, do this. Then I came up with an idea. It was in an old abandoned building of a mine, and that's pure concrete. And when I saw the place, I was like, told the guys like, "Do you have like fuel or something?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have some sort of like chemical thing in my truck and stuff. Like, can you bring it and we can set up this place on fire because this is not gonna turn down." So I was like, I just burned the place completely. I almost burned myself. I almost fell down shooting the photos. It was really warm. It was really intense. When they saw the hell that I put up there, they were like, even then they were like, "Fuck, this is brutal." They
Nice.
immediately got the energy, so I started building up. He have a site, and I told him like put the side front. I throw whatever it was. I think it wasn't fuel. It was some kind of kerosene or something like that. I throw it there, and the side got on fire as well. And the guy was like, "Fuck yes!" And everyone got the energy. The photos came up like really energetic. Like you see the photos
Yeah.
and you think that it's actually look out of like an army getting out of hell or something like that. So
No, those are great
so it feels
photos.
pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah, I did see those. Yeah, man. That's fucking awesome. I love that kind
So
of thing,
that's what I try to do. Honestly, I don't try to push it. Same was with Cult of Fire. I go to the place. In the cave was some security and stuff because I couldn't. They didn't accept like people to go around by themselves in some areas. So I just talk with the security, like, and we walk around and stuff, like just because I need to see the place, I need to feel it before I shoot the photos. And the guy was like, "Yeah, sure." And we walk together. I just look around, and then I was like, "Okay, this is what." Now I have the idea what I want to do. Unfortunately, we were limited with time as well because that was before the concert, and then we start
yeah.
shooting the photos 1 hour before they open doors. So I was quite of limited with time. I would have liked to do way more than what we did, but unfortunately, time was not our side. So I mean, but it was still the photos came up pretty good. I mean, so
It's good to hear that you yourself were happy with them. Actually, well, I do think that they look very good as well.
thanks.
I mean, their aesthetic is one of them things that you can't go wrong with it, but also you need to be able to capture it the right way to do it justice, which I do think that you did. But yeah, that's cool, man. I like hearing that about your approach, and like I like the idea of just going with the flow as well. Sometimes the less you force something, the better and more organic it's going to be. Which is actually, funnily enough, how I tend to conduct this podcast as well. I don't really do that much preparation, especially for a lot of the people that get the opportunity to speak to, yourself included. I'm already familiar with the work,
Yeah.
so the questions generate themselves, which brings me to my next point. And I would absolutely be remiss if I didn't ask you about this. But aside from the work that you did as an artist and the photography and everything else related to music and arts, you were also previously working as a pilot, which
Yeah, exactly.
you briefly mentioned to me this when we were talking a little while ago, and I was kind of mind blown by this. So, just and which country was this again that you said you were
That was
working
in
as?
Panama. That was in Panama, in Central America. I was
In
based in Panama actually.
in Panama. So just tell me, first of all, how do you end up getting into a situation like that, or even
Mm,
working as a pilot to begin with, but then
mm.
let alone in the circumstances that you were surrounded by, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with everyone
Yeah,
here.
sure. I mean, uh, I'm the kind of person that have done really a lot of things, so different things in my life. Like what's the word, like polyphacetic, I think it's called, like when
Mm.
you are like into a lot of different things. I think that's the word, or maybe
Like
I'm
a
making it. I
Renaissance
don't know.
man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I mean, I always liked or been drawn to aviation. One day I have the opportunity actually to start the private pilot course actually right away when I finished high school, and I was like, that sounds cool. Why not? I mean, I'm quite of impulsive sometimes in things. I was not really prepared for it when I got to my first day of private license class. I mean, we were like 10 people probably, and many of them already knew a lot about aviation. They knew everything, airplanes. They knew I didn't even knew which model of airplane I was going to learn flying. I didn't know anything. I mean, I was just like, I like aviation. Airplanes are cool. Why not to try it? So I got into it, and aviation is quite of like, it's not a regular job that you can think later like 8 to 5 and that's it. That turns
Mm.
into a lifestyle. You
Sure.
have a lot of sacrifices. You have to study a lot. It's really intense, and it demands a lot from you. Not only in the part of like your time about like your studies and stuff. It demands a lot of like in the physical part, emotional part, psychologically. It's a career deeper than what many people think, that it's only get into an airplane, fly, and that's cool. Uh,
When you say
because you have
emotional and psychological, are you talking about perhaps the just the possibility of not making it, or just having that at the back of your mind that you have the responsibility of not just your own life, the vehicle, but also everyone else that's on board? Is that sort of the area you're alluding to with that?
Yeah, in a way, yes. Because if you're irresponsible, you don't only kill yourself, you kill a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
You it's a really big responsibility in that way. Uh, so emotionally as well, because you have to disconnect your personal life or your personal thoughts in the moment that you set a foot on the airport. That's like all what you've been gone through. You have to forget about it and you just focus on what you're going to do, even when it sounds quite of odd. Imagine a clown. A clown have to make people laugh.
Mm.
Imagine if you have a bad day and you're sad. In the moment that you put up your painting and your dress and everything, you need to disconnect about your sadness and do your job. Otherwise, no one's going to hire you. In aviation, it's quite similar, but in a
Mm.
more extreme way. You can have
Sure.
bad days. You mind you're struggling economically or different ways. Someone in your family is sick or something like that, or whatever. You come to the airport and you have to disconnect yourself from that, and it's pretty difficult to learn to detach your feelings
Yeah. Yeah,
because
for sure.
then you come up to the airplane. You did takeoff and stuff. That's a rush, but then you level up, cruise level. You're doing absolutely almost nothing, and then the thoughts can start coming back. You lost concentration, you lost focus, and that's when mistakes happen.
Wow.
So it's pretty difficult in that way. I mean, it's quite of a many people see it like fancy. Look at the pilots come to the airport, fancy hotels and stuff like that, but it's a really lonely life
I can
because
imagine that.
you're
Yeah.
sleeping in different countries all the time, staying in hotels. I mean, it's a beautiful career. I'm not gonna say anything about that, but it demands a lot from you actually. So physically as well, every 6 months or every year, depends your age, you have to do medical tests to see how you are. Plus the change of pressure when you're flying. Uh, that goes to your body. I mean, so you start feeling it
You know,
with
it's
time.
interesting because I mean, I was only just on a flight yesterday actually. I
Oh
was
yeah, you came
coming.
from Norway.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, this was actually the first time I'd been on a flight in since last year because obviously it's a very long story, but basically, yeah, it was my first chance to actually finally be able to leave this country again. And you know, when I was on the plane, I was thinking to myself how being a pilot must be a lot like, in a sense, a lot like being a fighter, because it doesn't mean, you know, like it only matters where you are now. So you might have absolutely nailed the flight yesterday or the day before or the last time and managed to land safely and not kill anyone, but that's irrelevant now. What matters is how you're going to do it today. And it's a
Exactly.
continuous thing where you have to stay all the way to the top and constantly be performing as best as you can. And I think that's a difficult thing, you know, and that's again being humble is a big part of that, because if you think like, oh yeah, I'm the greatest pilot in the world, then a mistake could come and
Yeah,
get you, and you can't
exactly.
really afford that, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Is every flight is completely different. You get even for example, when you learn to fly, for example, a specific model of airplane, you operate one airplane, you get down off that airplane, and you get another airplane like exactly the same model, and the airplane will be different somehow. So you need actually uh, you need to get into the moment, like and focusing what you're doing in that moment. Plus, what I was telling you about the tool over your body is like it's considered 1 hour flying is like 2 hours in a regular job. So, for
Sure.
example, if you have a regular job of eight, or if you fly 4 hours, that's this. You put up the same amount of uh, pressure on your body that is like an 8 hours work. And usually, as a pilot, you fly 8 hours. 8 hours is the limit that you can fly per day. So it's like that's an 8 hours flight or 8 hours flight time. We're talking about 16 hours of someone's working at a regular job. So it's quite of rough. When you arrive in the morning, you don't feel exactly the same when you're done the last flight of the day, and that's a typical thing, and many people don't think about it. You get into an airplane as a passenger, you sit down, you're doing nothing, you're probably eating or sleeping, and when you get out of the airplane, you get out tired, and you have done nothing. It's because the difference of pressures. you're going through. And as a pilot, you have to learn to handle that and continue being focused.
And it's hard enough. Like, I mean, I can imagine you're sleeping and your hormones must be all over the place because not only are you working and working through weird hours, but you're also changing time zone every time you work, basically.
Mm.
And that must
And we as
be
humans,
huge.
we are not designed to fly.
No, no, we're not. And I know
So
everything
our
to do
body
with
is not
blood
for that.
pressure.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, everything to do with blood pressure and oxygen. And I mean, I was kind of fucking around yesterday. I was like trying some like breathing techniques and things whilst I was on the plane. Not because I was struggling, but I was just interested, to try and keep
Mm.
doing it. And I feel like that actually helped. That made the flight less sort of. It didn't drag as much. I mean, Norway's only 2 hours from the UK anyway,
Mm.
but I think I tolerated the flight better than I did the fucking coach journey afterwards. But
Mm.
but yeah, that's very interesting, man. So one thing about that, so it's not just that you were a pilot, and can I also ask actually, how long were you doing this for?
I worked as an airline pilot for 4 years, and I did 6 months as a flight instructor.
Okay, so I guess the 4 years in that career is a very long time, right? Considering that you said it's the hours are like double what you would normally
Yeah,
do.
in a way, yes. I mean, I work with other pilots that they were working for over 20 years in the airline, for example. So it's like, I mean, yes, it's a lot. It was really intense. I spent 2 years without vacation. I was working like crazy. Uh, so it was 4 years that I was completely dedicated to the career. Every 6 months, you have to go to the flight simulator. We did it in Texas. So every 6 months, you are going to a test. You fail, you're fired. You have
Uh,
the pressure as well.
yeah.
And the flight simulators are never really like they're never fun. They're we call it actually for fun like the simulator. We call it the Terminator because you go there to suffer.
Right. Okay. Sure. And do you go there to take me through that? Like, what do they do to you whilst you're in there? Is it
It's like
pressure and how you handle it, things like that, and
yeah,
oxygen?
this is a situation when you go to a simulator. First of all, uh, there are not really many simulators of a specific airplanes around the world because a simulator costs exactly the same amount of money that the airplane, so it's really expensive. So for my airplane, we have simulators in Houston, and the other ones were in France. So they were pilots all around the world traveling, even from India or different places to travel into Texas just for the training. So the simulator is going every 24 hours a day. So you get the schedules that you get. I, for example, sometimes get a schedule like a 1 in the morning. Then you have to arrive to the place 1 hour before for the briefing. So the briefing is not only that you sit down and they tell you what you're going to do. You sit down and they start asking you questions, and you need to know the answers. If you don't answer right away, you're done because they're not gonna put money that is really expensive in those simulators on someone that doesn't even know the theory.
Hmm.
So they start asking you questions. They go through the emergencies that you're going to practice. Then you get to the simulator for 4 hours. Uh, the 4 hours are divided in 2 hours, two and two. So 2 hours you do as a pilot fly, that you're the one flying, and the other one is doing the checklist and emergency. And the other 2 hours you're doing like pilot no fly, that you are doing the checklist, and the other one is flying. You need to know both roles. So you get there for 4 hours. Imagine you get up like you already get to the training center at midnight. You start the simulator at 1. You finish at 5 in the morning. Then you go out for a debriefing that it can take 1 more hour where you're gonna go like through what you did wrong, what you did good, more questions, and then you're done at 6 in the morning to go back to the hotel, eat breakfast, probably sleep, study then, and then in a couple hours going back to the simulator to do the test because you only do 4 hours
Jeez.
practice before you got a test with the aviation authority. So you need to be ready, and yeah, you go there tired, you go with stress, and in the simulator is emergency after emergency. They put they will put you the worst conditions ever that you can imagine, just to push your boundaries and to practice as many emergencies as possible. For the next 6 months, they will know that actually, if something of this happened to you, you already practice and you will be able to go through the emergency and do it in a proper way.
Mm.
So it's quite of difficult. I mean, I mean, that's a lot of computers and stuff, and the simulator is part of a box that you get into, and you move like the airplane kind of. That's a really cold room, and sometimes the adrenaline hit you so much that you even forget that you're in a simulator. I got out like dripping sweat like crazy, like my shirt was like completely, like I've been like running or something like for a while. I mean, even when it's so cold, is the adrenaline got you. It's crazy. I seen pilots sometimes when they put when they crash in a simulator, they even cover their face like because
Oh
they
wow.
forget that they are in a simulator.
Yeah, I have to admit, man, that does sound pretty fucking difficult. So yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and you know,
So
but in a way, it's also reassuring that it is difficult. You know what I mean? You know, so like
yeah, it should
when
be. It should be. So you don't have
yeah,
an incompetent pilot flying.
yeah. That's interesting, man. How much notice would they normally give you before they make you go through that?
You do it every 6 months.
Every 6 months, right?
Every 6 months, and they tell you in advance like your schedule next month simulator and stuff. But I mean, the thing is, you should not really just study to pass a simulator and approve. I mean, you should study in general on often to be able to, if any emergency happens to you at any point. I mean, the simulator is not there just like to approve a test. The simulator there is there for they can assure that you're actually profit to like to do everything in case that something happens to you. So I mean, honestly, they should not really. I mean, as a pilot, it's not really that you start studying before the simulator just to approve. They should be able like to put you tell you today you're going to simulator now. You should sit down in a simulator and do everything right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of
That's the
course.
situation.
No, I can appreciate that, man. Yeah, again, it sounds like a very difficult career, but I've got respect for that. You know, it takes a lot to be able to go through that and keep on top of it. Didn't you also mention to me that there were some almost life-threatening situations back in Panama relating to that as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, through many, many, many situations, actually. I mean, to start with
Please tell.
one, I actually have once fire in one engine on flight. So it was like we took off in the morning, just regular flight with passengers. We were going to an island in the Caribbean. Sounds beautiful. Actually, the place is like paradise. First flight in the morning, 6:40. We were just climbing, and then we have the engine number two got on fire.
Oh
So
shit.
actually, so we
Oh.
did all the procedure, declared the emergency, and then the we we request return back to our airport from where we took off. I mean, it was just like 10 hours, 10 minutes flight. So it was pretty close, but it was like 10 longest minutes in my life. I couldn't really see the fire from the cockpit, but I remember I mean, we have alarms and stuff that tells us we have fire. And then the flight attendant called us and asked like, "What is going on?" I can see fire in the right wing, so I was like, "Fuck, it's real." You are prepared always like to react to alarms, but it could be a false alarm. It could be just an indication. I mean, we did all the procedure, shut down the engine, activate fire extinguishers and stuff, but then the we still have the alarm of fire, and then we were like, probably it's indication because we saw the temperature went down. So it was like the engine temperature. So it was like, okay, probably it's an indication. But then the flight attendant was like, I can see the right wing and the engine burning. I was like, fuck, it's real and still burning. So
Man.
we did all emergency. I mean, we it got pretty complex because the fire was really big. It broke some hydraulic pipes. We lost hydraulic systems that is part of the flight controls. So, but we managed to land. We evacuate everyone. Everything went smooth actually after landing. No one was hurt. Everything went perfect. But that is probably my only time in life that actually I get in a state of shock. A passenger told me like approached to me, say thanks so much for saving our life and stuff. But I was sitting next to the engine and I could see all the fire. You should check it out. And that's what the first moment that I actually got to the place and I could see that all the engine was burned from outside, and I lost my talk, and my hands start shaking in that moment, and then the adrenaline went down, and then your life instinct come up, like you were like, shit, I could have died actually in that moment.
Oh
So
my
actually, it
god.
was pretty rough. I was in shock like for around 5 minutes. Then I got up, like I reacted and everything. I mean, it was a long day. After that, we were sent to the doctor to do anti-doping tests to see if we have alcohol or drugs in our system right away for the insurance, because they
Ah,
always
of
searching
course.
right away like who is the if we actually have a misconduct and we did something wrong that could turn the fire.
Hmm.
Then after that, uh, we were like interrogation almost all day long. We finished
Did
probably
that
around 5 o'clock.
did that frustrate you, thinking, you motherfuckers, we almost just died and we've made it, and now you're making us
Yes,
go through this?
yeah, actually, the interrogation was a pretty rough situation because you go there not only with your boss, you go there with all the managers from the airline,
Hmm.
and there are a few that, for example, I mean, my boss he knew pretty well as a pilot how to handle a situation and what we did in the moment from our answers were the right thing to do. But then you get like, for example, people from the economy department and stuff like that that, to be honest, are just thinking about money and they start
Yeah.
asking lame questions and they tell us like why you did this and why you didn't did this and I was like okay it's pretty I got really upset honestly when someone just sitting in their desk is telling you what to do that this person don't have the training that you have this person is not being pushed with the stress that you've been pushed and I got angry and I told him like you know something it's pretty easy for you to sit down here and tell me what I should have done when was my ass up there with 46 passengers and the rest of the crew that we could have died at any second.
Yeah.
Then my boss was like, "Hey, calm down." I was like, "No, calm down. No, I mean, this guy have to need to understand. This is not really like no. It's not about the economy. It's not about like because they told us like, well, we didn't land in another airport that could have less. How can I say like less? There was another airport that it was only for maintenance. Like they didn't have like commercial flights. So they were like, if you land there, you will not have like a lot of like reporters and news and stuff. I was like, I don't care at the moment. Like the manual doesn't tell me like land in the place where the news will not reach you. The manual tell me land as soon as possible because you have an engine on fire. So
Yeah.
things like that, and that part made me really angry. But I mean, after all, we did a good job. It went pretty good. But that was one of many experience. The one probably
So
you're sorry.
just just quickly, like, how do you process that afterwards? Did that actually change how you view life and death in any way, or do you think that experience, because that's a highly traumatic situation, and these things can have a very profound impact on us. So did that change you in any
I'll
way?
be honest. I'll be honest. I'm not gonna play here like to be like the tough guy or anything like that. When I came back home, I cried.
Of course.
I was
Yeah.
still like, and I'll be honest. Even today, I still wake up. I mean, I'm talking like that was in 2010. Some days I still have nightmares about the situation.
Mm,
Like, I mean, I
yeah.
wake up sometimes in the night. I'm like, fuck. But I mean, it's not really that I have traumatized or anything like that. I sleep perfectly as a passenger in airplanes. I mean, I'm pretty cool. I'm not afraid of flying. I mean, after that, I mean, that was a half of my career as a pilot. Sorry, I still work in the airline for 2 more years. So, and I got to be one of the senior co-pilots that actually I was set up like to do all the flights of like when, for example, the airplane being in maintenance and you have to do a flight check to see if everything works perfectly. I was the one like in charge of those kind of flights. So
Yeah.
I never really felt I mean, like I couldn't fulfill my duties. I mean, but yeah, I get that night at home, I cried all that. I was still in shock. It takes you a little bit of time to process it, but I mean, it's quite of a difficult situation, honestly. I have a friend I knew, like he was also in a really tough emergency, and what he did is actually after that he told me like I just went home, I sat down with a bottle of vodka, and I just got drunk the whole night. I just drinking the whole night because I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't stop thinking. So yeah, we're humans. I mean, we all handle situations like that in different ways.
Mm.
So
But I think that's okay, man. That's perfectly fine. I think there's a, you know, when you look at trauma, there's different ways to look at it as well, you know, because it can be so emotionally charged, of course, you know, and this
mm,
can be different types of it, you know. It can be a near miss, or it can be something that does actually happen. There's these things that, you know, the way that our minds are very they're very high in plasticity, you know,
mm,
like brain plasticity is a real thing, you know. That's basically the even or neuroplasticity rather, that's a process of how you learn something. And when you go
mm,
through an experience like that, and then that gets imprinted in your mind hardware somewhere, it can be very challenging. But besides the emotional aspect of it, you can also look at it very much from an analytical point of view of, well, I understand that this is how I'm feeling about it, but then how does my mind react to it? How can I
mm.
better this? You know, and sometimes you just gotta go through the motions. The more
Exactly,
I think you suppress something like that, the worse of a monster it really becomes down the line, I
exactly,
think.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean those situations are pretty difficult. I mean, I knew I knew cases about pilots that they have emergencies after that they quit their career.
Mm.
They were
Yeah, I
like,
can
nope.
appreciate that. Yeah, sure.
I mean, there's so it's like it's different for each person. It goes like also how you handle it. Uh, I remember once actually we were doing a flight back, last flight of the day. We got caught in a really bad storm. There, the main airport, our destiny airport got closed. Our alternative airport also was closed. Everything was bad. We were doing holding in a really bad storm. It was like 5 o'clock, and it looked outside like it was midnight because the clouds were black as hell. I mean, the radar was completely red. We were just like shaking and stuff, doing holding for around 15 minutes. And then I was cool with those kind of things. I never really care. And I just look at the other pilot, and he have a really bad face. And I was like, "Hey, Captain, are you okay?" And then he just looked at me and was like, "My mother told me to be a fucking lawyer, not a pilot. What the hell I'm doing here?" I just cracked laughing. I was like, "What the fuck?" I
Shit.
was like, "What the fuck are you laughing? We're not getting paid extra for this shit." And I was like, it's cool. I
Wow.
mean, things like that. So it's like, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's pretty stressful sometimes. So, I mean, so it depends how you handle it. Some people never get used to the bad weather. I didn't care. I was like, actually, I always, when I get into really bad turbulence, I used to fly in mountain areas. Sometimes it's like it got really shaky. Once the autopilot got disconnected, and I was the one flying, I have to grab the yoke and start flying. And I felt like I'm grabbing the bull by the horns. It's like, and then just like fighting it. So
Yeah.
it was really fun. I mean, I was pretty cool for those kind of things. So I mean, I like the adrenaline. So
I think that's the best way to look at it, is to look at it as in almost like you're choosing that situation and to go with it, man. I like that a lot.
mm.
Um
Yeah, and
uh,
probably the experience that you were telling me before. Actually, I mean, just gonna make it short. Uh, it was once that actually was like in a Panama doesn't have militaries, so they don't have the infrastructure and equipment, like for example, to handle difficult situations. Like in some part of the, if something gets out of control, like in different cities and stuff. And it happens once that it was like one city that actually got in a pretty bad situation, and they declared like a national emergency. And actually, the government hired the airline to transport the police to the place where it was the emergency. Actually, it was indigenous people. They were like they were not happy with some laws from the government and stuff like that. So actually, what they did is like they took a village, they chopped trees, blocked the roads to get inside the village, and then they took control of the place. They burned the hospitals, they burned the police station. They were like attacking everything. The only place that it was still under control in the place was the airport, and actually it was the only way for the police to get through that place in that place was the airport. So I was arriving from one flight, and they told me like you have to leave after you leave the passengers at the gate. You have to bring the airplane to the hangar. I'm like, what happened? The airplane is fine. I don't have any report, so I'm ready to our next flight. No, you have to do it, and we will tell you later what's going on. When I arrived, I saw like a lot of police and everything going on. I was like, shit, what's going on? I was not aware what was happening. Then they told us like, well, you're gonna do an emergency flight, like a national emergency flight, and you have permission from the Civil Aviation Authority. Here's the signature of the person saying that you are allowed to break all the rules that you need to make this flight. I was like, fuck, this sounds intense. We are not allowed as a civil aviation transport, like to bring, for example, people with guns in the airplane or anything like that. But then we got 50 police officers with guns, shotguns, and everything. We got explosives. We got like dogs for attack and everything, like on cages. And I was like, "Fuck, this is interesting." So like, yeah, and actually the airplane is gonna be overweight for takeoff, so you have to do it. I was like,
Great.
okay, we have like a specific takeoff weights and stuff like for that. We were like a little bit over the takeoff weight, but we did it anyway. That was really intense because I was like, I'm a civilian. I'm civil. I don't have any kind of like military or police background, so it was quite of intense. I mean, we did the flight, and it was in a way it was pretty cool because I was telling the police, giving orders like where to put the stuff in the airplane. So I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, oh, it's not really often that you as a civilian can tell the police what to do. So I was like, this
Jesus.
was
Yeah, yeah,
pretty
yeah,
cool
yeah.
actually. So then we
Fucking
we did the
hell.
flight, and when we were like on cruise level, the chief of police came to the cockpit and gave us some gas masks and told us like, we know you have your own masks, but we have to give you this because in the moment that we land, if we get in a confrontation, we're gonna throw this kind of like gas pepper stuff, so you need to cover yourself right away. I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds cool, let's do it.
Fucking
Then we
hell.
were going to we were arriving to the airport, and just when we were on final, almost like seconds to land, the control tower tells us like you have to abort the landing because the airport is under attack. Of course they wanted to take the airport because then they will be able to control the complete city.
So what? They were shooting
And
at the plane that you were flying
no, at the airport.
at the airport
I don't know if
itself.
they were shooting. I don't know how was the situation, but the police was in confrontation right now with the other people at the airport. So they was like, for safety reasons, abort the landing. So we just abort. We just went up, land in another city, waited for a while. Then they told us like, no, we have calmed down. You can come back. So we just land pretty fast, took everyone out, and we start evacuating people that they've been injured in the situations. I mean, I remember I got one guy that actually he lost one eye. He got some kind of like pellets or something like in his eye, so he lost it actually. So he was with a
Oh.
patch and stuff. Like he was a lot of people in really bad shape. So yeah, have to do those kind of like start evacuating people. I did a lot of flights for that. So it was quite of an intense situation, honestly. Like you feel the adrenaline, like fuck. I mean, I'm not military, I'm not police. I was not at the side of the government or the side of anyone because I'm not really into politics or anything. But I just felt like, I mean, if I can help people because they were kids over there, they were women, they were different people that they were injured. So it's like if I can help someone just to get out of there, absolutely. So yeah, those kind of situations honestly change you forever.
I
Change you
bet.
pretty bad. Yeah, you never really. It's difficult. Like I mean, like to see pain in other people, but it feels good that you actually can do something to help them. So
That's fucking wild, man.
Yeah, and once actually, I mean, that was the first time. I did that twice because it happened later, like a few years later in another city. And I remember, I mean, as a pilot, I told you we are not allowed to fly more than 8 hours a day by regulation. That time I got to fly 13 hours in one day, just because there were no more pilots, so I have to evacuate a lot of people. And I remember during one of the flights, I mean, the people were sleeping at the airport because it was the only place safe. And I remember one woman came to me and told me like she was crying, and she said like, "I hear that your flight is already full, but please, I'm not telling you to take me. I'm telling you to take my kids. My husband is in your city waiting for us." I was like, "Fuck! How I tell a mother like no?" So actually, we managed like we took one of the kids in the cockpit with us. The other kid was with the flight attendant. So yeah, I mean those kind of things is that you really feel like, I mean, how you tell someone no, that is like so desperate, like even like just take my kids. It doesn't matter if I stay here. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. I mean, so it was. I remember that time we were so freaking tired. We told the flight attendant to every 5 minutes to come to the cockpit and actually see if we were awake.
Sure, yeah. Well, did you say 13 hours? So was this back and forth, or was this all one
Yeah,
continuous
back and
flight?
forth, back and forward.
Back and
The flight,
forth.
the total
Yeah.
length flight was only 1 hour, and we were just like going to the place, leaving police, taking people back, going again, leaving more police, taking more people back. We were just like that, back and forward, like.
That's so tough, man. See, like a lot of people, when they might hear something like that, they'll think to themselves, oh, if that was me, this is what I would do, or like, oh, yeah, should have done this or that, Not
Mm,
that, I mean, it sounds like you absolutely did everything as well as it could have been done anyway, but it's one of them things. Not many people go through situations that are as challenging and as intense, I suppose, and you hear
mm,
stuff like that with like people in Afghanistan, when the whole shit kicked off, I think just over a year ago, whenever that was, and then everything that was happening with it, and then they were trying to get people out and things like that. It's fucking wild, but fair play to you for going through it, and I'm glad that you're still sat here in front of me while having this conversation, having
thanks.
gone through those things, man. Fucking
Mm.
nice.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
those are actually experiences that actually they're really rough, but it build you. Actually, it change perspectives on you, it change like the way you think,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, it makes you a complete different person. You're never the same after experiencing things like that, to be honest. And I
Yeah.
don't mean, at least for me, was I didn't really try like in a negative. I didn't. I was not affected from, as I think, in a negative way. I'm a person like, for example, I don't suffer from pressure. I don't suffer from like, you should do this or something. I don't get any of that. When I was younger, yeah, when I was teenager, like, yeah, there's always kids like telling you what to do, and you always like try to fill inside a group or something. Probably that's the way that I am now. I don't feel I need to please anyone in a way, like, so I don't really, I don't care if someone likes or doesn't like. I mean, yeah, if someone like, I appreciate it, but if someone doesn't like what I do, for example, it's like, that's your problem, not mine. so
Yeah.
So, and actually, I mean, that all those things, when it comes like in the metal scene, for example, sometimes I find it quite of interesting, because there's many people in the metal scene that talks about like violence and stuff like that. But I just think sometimes like, have you really experienced that for real? What you're talking about? There's
Hmm.
many people that praise war, for example, and it's fun because many of those people that praise war are people that haven't really been in situations like that.
Exactly. Yep. 100%.
So I find it
Yeah.
interesting sometimes uh, when things get too pretentious.
Yeah, well, I guess it's at the end of the day, it's a form of fantasy, isn't it? And a lot of things in life aren't as pretty as we like to think that they are. Just the act
Mm,
of being in a band alone is the furthest thing from a fantasy. But at the same time, you know, like even though you're gonna find yourself in financially shitty situations, a lot of traveling, a lot of tiredness, a lot of relationships that become unstable due to the environment of the band, or just the distance and the commitment and things like that, and just finding yourself, in the corner of, fucking damp, shitty fucking
mm,
venues, that just smell of
mm,
drink, and people are just there and they just want to see a show.
mm.
Sometimes they might not even really care about you that much, or anything. Even with all of that in mind, it's a fucking honor to do it. It's cool as
Mm.
fuck. You do it because you
Yeah,
want to do it, and and simply doing it alone makes it worthwhile because it's an expression, and something that needs to happen. It's something
mm.
that needs to manifest, and if you're chosen to be the vessel for it, what bigger honor? You can only do your best to try and channel it through.
Exactly.
So, no complaints.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah,
part of the game.
absolutely, man. I do have to ask you as well, in relation to, obviously, everything that you mentioned with these types of life experiences, and well, basically near death experiences. And it wasn't that it was even an illness or anything, but it was physically being close to it. So
Mm.
when you go through experiences like that, how much does that have a spiritual impact on your life and on the way you observe that side of things?
Well, actually, I don't know if it's been directly that have a create an impact in this way, or it's been because I always been attracted to different to how can I say, like in a dark approach in life, how I seen things. But I mean, for example, I have like a fascination like for death in different cultures, like how that has been handled by different religions or countries around the world. So actually, even I'm an atheist. Uh, but that doesn't mean that I'm not spiritual.
Mhm.
I mean, I believe in energy, but I always find it interesting how other cultures and stuff deal, even through religion, because that is connected to religion in most of cultures. I mean, so I always, when I have the opportunity, I start actually, how can I say, like, start traveling and experience it by myself, how different cultures have dealt with it. I
You
have
actually
done, I
visited
have,
the temples in India, right?
yeah, I went to Varanasi. That is the
Yeah.
city of the dead where people go to die, actually. Went to the cremation grounds to see how were the rites.
What was that
It was
like?
something really, oof, it was intense in all possible ways. It was really warm. Physically, it was like you step in an oven. And I always say I come from a tropical country, but I'm not a tropical person. I don't like heat at all. I'm not a beach person. You will not see me like partying in the beach, like or like I avoid even summer festivals because
I
of
kind
that.
of relate to that. Yeah,
And
sure.
imagine to get to a place where it's like over 20 funeral pyres at the same time. It's really hot. I get to visit, for example, the Eternal Fire. That is supposed that it's a fire that has been burning over 3,000 years. And I shoot a photo of that, and I did it with my eyes closed because it was painful even to open my eyes. So
From the
it was
heat.
extremely warm. Yeah, the heat was insane. So in a physically way, it was intense, but spiritually, you feel the energy. You feel it's different. It's something really different.
Mm.
I got out of there completely covered in ashes because it was like burning everywhere. Um, I have a black T-shirt, and it was completely covered with ashes everywhere. You could see that it was sorry, with like white spots everywhere, like from the ashes.
Is it
So it
corpses
was really
burning, or
intense.
is it just wood, or what is
No,
it?
corpses, corpses.
Mm.
Those are the funeral pyres. So actually, they started right there, like burning everyone, and then the person that handles the fire, take the remains and throw the Ganges River.
So literally that many funeral pyres. I thought that you were just making an analogy to describe the heat.
No,
So
no, no,
you
no. Those are funeral
literally had
pyres.
that. All
Yeah, actually,
right.
in one moment I was standing up, just looking at one fire, like because the whole process to start a fire, it have steps by steps, so it's a complete rite. And I was just standing looking, and then someone screamed to me like, "Move, move, move!" And I was like, "What the fuck?" And when I moved, they just put a corpse in front of me, like in my feet. I was like, "Okay." So they were just going to start with another person.
Mm.
The person that guided me inside that area actually took me to one place and told me like, "Come here and look at here in the fire." And when I got close, it was like 1 meter of me. I could see like the face of someone burning. Like,
I mean, corpses are kind of funny because, whether it's people or animals, it's a different thing because you can tell there's no one there anymore. It's just like a physical object, really.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But that physical object is with, for example, still with the families because, for
Mm.
example, the usually the elder son is the one that start the fire.
Oh, I
So
see.
actually, but it's quite of interesting to see how they deal with it. You see them playing music, dancing, and stuff like it's a celebration. And I was really interested because for us in the Western countries, I mean, we deal with death in a completely different way. Like we mourn, we express that we are sad, and they were just like dancing and stuff. And I talked with someone, and he was like, "Well, we are sad inside, but we have to show that we are happy outside because otherwise that person will not rest properly. Will like to stay in our plane, and we have to let them rest. So we have to show them that we are happy that now they're finally
Mm.
going to nirvana." I was like, "That's interesting." So
Fuck, that is so profound because many times I've thought about this a lot. When you see people crying at a funeral, a lot of times I think that's actually something that is inherently out of selfish reasons, and because
mm,
every person is thinking about themselves. That like
exactly.
it's reminding them of something that they don't want to face, and like you can love the person who's passed away as much as you
Mm,
like, but at the end of the day, what makes you cry is because it's yourself. Really, it's a
mm,
reflection, which I
exactly.
always found that was an interesting thing. But what's profound about this culture and what you just described to me is that they are overriding their own selfishness to,
Mm.
I guess, sort of push along this spirit to
That's
rest.
why actually I mean, not talking about my thoughts, talking about what I learned there. They said that, for example, the women are more difficult for them to hold their emotions. That's what they say there. And that's why, for example, when the husband die, the woman is not allowed to go to the funeral pyre because back in the days, she jumped to the fire as well and kill
Mm.
herself. So they were like they didn't want these things anymore. So or they didn't want someone crying. So actually they don't accept woman as a family member like in the cremation grounds.
But this is perhaps a bit of a morbid question, but they seemed very open to death. So, um, what would they have? Let's hypothetically say she wanted to jump on and join in. What do they have anything against that, or is it that suicide is something that's frowned upon to them?
Well, I'm not an expert, so it's quite of difficult to answer that question exactly like with 100%. But I think what they don't want is I mean, legally first they are not they quite of like
Oh
a
yeah,
difficult thing
of
like
course, yeah. Sure. I was just
So
curious, like, yeah.
yeah, and to disturb also the ritual, kind of in a part of like a ceremonial way, because what
Mm.
happens if, for example, someone jumps and then you as other people, you cannot stand there and do nothing, so you will probably try to help or something, and then you should not really turn off that fire, something, so probably to don't disturb the ceremony as well, because this is the process for that person to go to nirvana, because for the average person that didn't manage to be a sadhu or an aghori, that person haven't reached enlightenment. So the only way actually to break the cycle of death and rebirth is actually die in Varanasi and be in the cremation ground. So I guess like
Hmm.
for them, like they don't want to disturb the ceremony either. So
I can appreciate that because it's literally a once in a lifetime thing, then, right?
exactly, yeah, literally, yeah, exactly what it is. And actually,
Yeah.
many people over there prepare themselves when they actually get sick and they know that they're going to die. They go to Varanasi. They're transported there, and they are staying at a place where actually they while like they take care of them to their final days, so that person can die there. Because imagine, I mean, India is a huge country, so imagine if you live in the south or something like that. I mean, the moment that you reach Varanasi, that is in the north, I mean, the body is already in the worst state ever. So actually, and many people don't have the money for that either. So actually, many those that actually can afford it, because it costs a fee to get into the ceremony. I mean, to be cremated, not because you have to pay too much money to the for the ceremony. You have to buy the wood, and the wood it comes especially from Tibet,
Oh, interesting. So they've got
if I
an
remember correctly. So you
yeah.
have to. I mean, in euros, we're talking about probably like, I think if I remember correctly, it was like 300 euros or something like that. It could cost for you to be cremated. For us, doesn't sound that much, but
Mm.
for them, they leave. Many of the people leave probably with 5 euros a day,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, or even less. So it's really expensive for them, and not everyone can afford it. So those can afford it. They just go there and prepare to die, because yeah, that's the place where you should die as an Hindu.
Oh, okay. So it's for Hindus only. Because I was gonna say, I wonder if there's many tourists that go there just to die, basically, because they can obviously afford it easier.
I mean, if you're into Hinduism, uh, of course, I mean, you can still do it, but I mean, if you are a foreigner, but I don't think. I mean, there's so many people around here that, for example, like I'm not talking about like for people from India, for example, here. Like I'm talking about like other people, like that are really into the religion, probably that they are willing to travel to die there because that's what they believe. I mean, so.
What do you think is the relationship between death and fire? Because a lot of times, pretty much in almost every culture, you will find that there's a correlation there. So whether it's the funeral pyre in Varanasi, which you mentioned, whether
Mm,
it's the Vikings that set the boats on fire, or whether it's even just the way they do cremation over here, which I really don't like that method, by the way, because they put lots of chemicals in that person, and it's a
mm,
very weird and unnatural way of doing it, in my opinion. But
mm,
even also like the act of lighting up candles, lighting incense. I've even seen Muslims do this on graves,
yeah.
where they light incense on top of candles. I mean, I have my own thoughts of this, but what do you think is the correlation of these two elements, if you will?
For the fire purification,
Purification.
it's a way to purify
Well, what's the
with the with
necessity to purify? Do you think? What is it that we are trying to purify from
probably
life into
ourselves.
afterlife?
We are natural sinners. So
Okay.
I mean, a person that doesn't sin, at least like, I mean, when it comes to religious point of views, or moral point of views. I mean, let's be honest, all of us sin plenty times a day.
Mm. Yeah.
So I mean, so I guess like it's like a way like actually to purify us like from what everything that we have done and or thoughts
But why
and
do you think that is? Why do we need to purify that? You know, like why
because
is
it's
there a
supposed that
need?
if you're going to if you're going to a pure place where actually doesn't evil doesn't exist, you should enter in a purified way. You should be pure of everything. So you should leave
Mm.
all those kind of like carnal desires or everything that you have in this plane and leave it behind and be a complete different entity. So probably that's it could be. I mean, could be wrong. I mean, I know each culture have like different, like not exactly different, but I mean, perspective about how they. I mean, it probably is a process as well, like to like this. I mean, if you see part of it, like in culture, in different cultures, it's about like living this. How can I say the physical form? If you see, for example, you have in some in India as well. In some parts, you have the Tower of Silence or the those fields where actually they left their bodies and then they come the vultures and start like eating. So it's actually a way like to destroy
Yeah.
already what we are, to transcend the physical form and turn into energy. So probably could be
Mm.
that with the incense, what you said in Buddhism, if I remember correctly, and Hinduism, incense is a way to feed the gods. That's what they get feed of.
Hmm.
So
Interesting. Yeah. The way
so
I
that's
look
why
at
you
it,
always offer incense in temples.
that
I
is
went to one
correct.
temple, the called the Dakshankali temple. That is that's south of Kathmandu, like, and they do this over there. They still sacrifice animals, and when you give offerings, part of the offerings that you have to give is incense.
And are there specific incense and which deity are we talking about here?
They have different shrines with different gods. I'm
Interesting.
talking in
Right.
Hinduism. That the Dakshankali temple is a temple for Kali, actually. So it was really interesting because Kali demands blood. It's actually they still sacrifice animals there. So people sometimes buy goats, chickens, things like that for sacrifice. I saw people that they were coming with little goats, just like to bring them to the chamber that they have behind the temple because they don't do it in front. But that was a really powerful experience actually because arrived to the place and that's actually outside of Kathmandu, so it's actually a bit far. So it's not a really a temple where have many tourists. So when we arrived to the place, we were only the only foreigners at the moment there. We arrived early in the morning. To get to the temple area, you have to take out your shoes and you walk barefoot to the temple. And as they already have made sacrifices, all the floor was covered in blood.
Hmm.
And it was cold in the morning, so it was a really powerful experience just to get there and walk over all the blood
I
to
think I
get through the
remember
place.
seeing a picture that you posted of
Yeah,
just basically being covered in sacrifice blood, sacrificial.
yeah. Well, no, well, that photo that I posted, it was well, I posted one photo actually walking the path on the temple
Yeah.
just slow about my feet because I didn't want to post anything else in the area. I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't
I
went
think
to the
that's what I'm
sacrifice
referring
chamber.
to. Yeah.
I didn't went to the sacrifice chamber. They're really uh, conservative in the way that they do it. They don't want. I found that quite of interesting because if they don't do it anymore, like probably they did in 1,000 years ago. Uh, they put up the way like the sacrifice. I mean, after that, actually they eat the animal because you the sacrifice is from yourself in a way that you buy the animal to bring it there. And then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, when the moment of the sacrifice the animal, they feed people like poor people that live in the area with that. So it's not actually like you're killing an animal and letting there to rotten. Probably how was done maybe 1,000 years ago. Now they have other thoughts, so so they put it in a symbolism of a sacrifice. Of course, the animal die, but at the same time it's eaten. So you can put it up like it's a ceremonial way of butchering,
Mm.
kind of, because you're not the one that gets feed for that. You're not gonna eat the animal that it was killed. So you are bringing it to other people. So in a way, like you put it up like you make a sacrifice from yourself, like go in there, bring the animal, and then other people eat it as well. Yeah. So it's like so
Do
I
they just
didn't
eat
fall.
the
I
animal
didn't feel
raw
like
on the spot?
no. They prepare it. They kill the animal and then they prepare it and stuff, and then they bring the meat somewhere else, so that where they cook it. So because those kind of countries have a lot of people that are like really low incomes, so they feed
Yes,
other people there. So
it's kind of like it's multi-purpose, isn't it? It's a religious thing,
exactly,
but it's also that's a
exactly. Not
that's
probably like as I said, like back in the days, like probably I don't know if they let the animal to rotten back
mm,
then, but I mean, but yeah, now they eat it. So
it's a noble
that
thing, I
actually
guess.
was
To
quite
if
of
you're
interesting. Sorry.
no, I'm just thinking like it's a noble thing to at least try and feed the community as well, especially as like you said that they are more poor as well, and it's fascinating to me because Kali is a truly phenomenal and just very interesting deity to withhold the energy and everything to do with it.
Mm.
Even the certain mantras, if you just say them out loud, there's something going on. It's very, very interesting. I don't want to
Yeah,
give
the
away
energy
too
is really
much.
strong.
Is very strong. Yeah, I don't want to give away too much on here, because if people want to go look into these things, that's them. But I don't want to tell them to do it. But there's
Mm.
a there's something there. There's
Yeah, exactly.
definitely
And
something
actually, it
there.
was really interesting because I here in my arm, I have a big Kali tattoo.
Yeah.
And when I was in Varanasi, I was in a cremation ground, and well, I met one guy there that guided me like through the place, and he told me today is really we have to go to the cremation ground again because there is arriving a really famous Akori that is coming from another city, and he's gonna be
Mm.
1 month here doing some rites and stuff. And I went to the place, and actually he was there, and I was introduced to him. He spoke really little English, but he was dressed in red because he was a Kali follower. And when I heard that, I showed him my tattoo from Kali, and he got really happy. He have also a tattoo of Kali in his arm here, so he
Ah.
showed me his tattoo, and he was really happy. I could see that he was like that. I have Kali in my arm, so that was a really interesting way. Like actually, even when we couldn't communicate talking, I mean, we got a connection in a moment. So
Yeah, that's
that
very
it was really,
interesting. Yeah.
many people approached to him and asked him for blessings, and they were going to pay him, and he didn't accept the money in any moment. He just gave the blessings, and so it was really interesting because yeah, there are some people that are also like a fraud. I mean, like they only want like the money from others, but this guy was not accepting money from anyone. He was just giving the blessings to people, and you could see that he have a really big amount of followers and stuff, and he didn't accept money from anyone.
That's wow. That talk about someone who's just dedicated to that. I mean, that's one thing I find absolutely fascinating about some of the spiritualists in whether it's in India or in Tibet. Like people who dedicate themselves wholly
Mm,
just to this just to their own spiritual path. People who'll sit on top of a fucking mountain and just practice breathing for 30 years, and then they can just
mm,
change different parts of their body's temperature by command and
exactly.
these things, or like there was some guy, I forget where exactly he was, but it was a monk who basically said that he wanted to raise his hand for his entire life or for like 100 years or something,
Mm,
and he basically did do that, and his hand was rotten completely from him holding it up, and I'm guessing the blood flow, not enough blood flow getting to
mm,
it, but that was a sign of him reaching his hand to God, which is
mm.
fucking bananas.
That's
You know, like
that's dedication.
yeah, like
Really, really, that's dedication at another level.
you can turn around and say like, oh wow, that's so stupid. You know, why would you do something like that? Or you can say whatever. But to me, I'm
Mm,
like, you know what? There's power to that. There's like fucking.
exactly.
I don't know if I would do that, but I can see why you would do that, and I respect it. You know,
Yeah, I
that's
don't
that's
have the
my
discipline.
thinking. Yeah.
Even when I'm a person with a lot of structure and a lot of motivation for things, I don't have the discipline for that. So
Hmm.
I respect that a lot. Those that actually dedicate themselves for something like they leave everything behind just to continue in a path that they believe.
But in a sense as well, it does make sense because you could think, well, that is perhaps the only path that makes sense. So I do
Mm,
understand that, you know, a lot of people, you know, I, to me, I'm about balance. You know, I'm one of them people
mm,
where to me, if you know, like, if your life doesn't have value, then you know, then your death doesn't have value either. That's my
mm.
thinking. You know, the way I
Yeah,
look at
exactly.
it
Yeah,
is
I mean, for me as well. I live by the motto of like life starts when your comfort zone ends. So I
preaching to the
actually
choir.
So I'm pushing myself all the time in different ways. I have done a lot of things in my life. I mean, haven't got the opportunity to hike the Everest, but I have been hiking here in Sweden, for example, at the in the biggest mountain that is in the of Sweden, that is the Kebnekaise. I did it 1.5 year ago. It was a big challenge. Wind was blowing at 80 kilometers per hour, -7 degrees.
Right.
Uh,
How long did it take you
yeah,
to do that?
well, it's 36 kilometers if I remember correctly. The whole path since you start in the base when you arrive towards the summit, and you do the first 25 kilometers the first day. That is almost plain actually. So you arrive to the base camp, and then the second day you do the round trip to the summit. So
And what's the
the
altitude?
it's not really that bad. It's actually only 2,100 meters, if I remember correctly. But it was
2000.
really
Okay.
intense. It's the weather at the last kilometer up was insane. It was blowing, as I said, 80 kilometers per hour, -7 degrees.
Mm.
I remember the day before I did the summit, I asked in the base camp those like the guys that work there about how it's going to be the weather, and they were like, "We don't recommend it to do it because it's going to be pretty bad." And I asked the guy, "Okay, you're telling me because I don't know the area, or you will not do it either." And he said, "I work here and I do it every day, and I will not go tomorrow." I was like, okay, fucking hell, if this guy is not going, it's for a reason. But then I saw like it was going to be a gap at the summit between 10 and 11 in the morning, if I remember correctly. So I thought like probably I can get up really early, like 4 in the morning, and start hiking. If I don't reach the summit before 10 in the morning, then I have to get back before it gets worse. So actually start hiking, and I did it. Was brutal. The last kilometer was insane. I was some moments that I could only get the hiking sticks, embrace them, and wait for the wind to calm down, because the only thing I could hear was the roar of the wind, and I could not move. So you feel really like you're to nature. It's like many people make the misconcept of like when they climb a mountain, they say like I conquer. Excuse me, you haven't conquered anything. The mountain give you the opportunity to get to the top, because that mountain could have killed you in any single moment.
Yeah.
You're nothing there. Actually, I knew really well that in the moment that I was there, if something happened to me, the guys were not going there, so no one was going to help me. Something happened to
Mm.
me, that's it, probably. So
But that's
it
one big
was it
problem
was
that they've
intense.
got with Mount Everest is that Everest is. I mean, you said that that place was 2,000. about
100. I mean,
kilometers basically.
Everest is way
Yeah. Well,
another level.
Everest that's obviously the tallest, that's the highest summit in the world, and that's eight. That's 8,000 kilometers, which is that's a
8,000, yeah,
lot.
meters. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
8,000 meters.
Yeah,
Sorry, that's right. Yeah, so
yeah,
eight
over. It's a little bit
kilometers.
more over 8,000 meters,
Yeah.
and
So that's
so
the one problem that they've got there is that Everest is covered in frozen corpses of people that
yeah.
went there and died, and
Mm.
it's too much trouble for them to
No,
go and collect
you
these
cannot
people to
get
bring
back
them down.
that body. I mean, Kebnekaise is not like that. Kebnekaise is still way more accessible, but still, when you get there, the landscape is like a place of the Lord of the Rings. It's epic,
Mm.
completely epic. And then when you hear the power of nature like that, I mean, okay, if you do it during summer, I did it September, the first week of September, so
Mm-hmm.
it was already the transition to September up there in the Arctic Circle is already can be pretty
Yeah.
cold. So I mean, yeah, when you feel how powerful is nature, you're like, I didn't conquer shit. The mountain just gave me the opportunity to get
Gave you
up.
the opportunity. I like that. I like that. You know what? That's from now on. Whenever I jump in the cold bath every morning, I'm gonna be like, and once I come out and survive, I'll be like, yeah, the cold gave me the opportunity to
Yeah, I said
survive.
it is like that because I mean,
Uh,
you imagine, for example, you jumped not long ago. It was like you told me to the frozen lake, was it, or river? I don't remember,
Yeah, I
right?
went to the top of this really tall hill. It was basically in the mountains in Drammen in Norway. It's not massively far from Oslo. It's like kind of
Mm.
like a bit of a side kind of city. What day did I go? Oh, I only went on Sunday, so it's Tuesday today. Yeah, I went there Sunday morning. And yeah, I went and swam in the frozen lake. It was fun. I
No,
enjoyed
in
it.
mine, like I mean, okay, it was a lake, but in mine, like circumstances, like I mean, you never, I mean, let's say, for example, a river that is frozen or something like that, a stream can come or something. I mean, can fuck you up at any moment. So
Sure.
that's what I mean. It's like the power of nature isn't something that we conquer.
Oh
So
no, no. I actually almost got fucked up at one point because um, there was one spot where there was a little bit of water that had melted just by the edge, and that's eventually where I ended up going in. But um, after that, I tried to go through this other side where there was ice just on the edge, and I didn't have any like shoes or any wetsuit or anything. I just went as I was. And basically, when you put your foot through the ice, you don't realize how slippery the rocks are gonna be beneath that. And
mm,
yeah, and then I kind of started slipping a bit, but then the ice wasn't hard enough to kind of keep me in place. So as I was slipping, the ice was just like breaking, and I was just like slowly going through it. I was like, okay, I need to find a way to get back now. Otherwise, I'm just gonna keep going further and further. I'm gonna get fucking stuck here. But
no, I fell 5 times actually in that hike. When I
yeah.
was in the summit, I fell down in my ass. It's
Should we
like
do one together? Let's find somewhere a bit taller, and then we'll both do it together. How does that sound?
yeah, that sounds good. Actually, I went to hike last year to Scotland, and I wanted to do the Ben Nevis, that is the biggest mountain there, but I
Yeah.
couldn't do it. So that one could be something. It's even closer for you. So maybe we
I,
can. I'm always up for it. I need to start working out again because I have leave my training for a while. But I really want to start doing it again. And my main idea was actually after Kebnekaise was to do Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro,
So
yes, yeah.
yeah.
Wim Hof did that with a bunch of like people who had all these different kinds of illnesses, and he talks
Mm,
about it in his book where basically all these people who had like different, like some of them were like almost like paralyzed or like having all
mm,
these different types of like autoimmune diseases and things. He basically like kind of coached these people to do his breathing technique and learn different
mm,
things. And then, as a group, they all went and then they reached the summit of Kilimanjaro, which is fucking
mm,
wild, you know. And then they did it in a very short space of time as well. I think something like within like 30 something hours, which is nothing
mm, mm.
considering how high up that
Yeah,
is
I
in
did the round
Africa.
trip for the with Kebnekaise, like the last part of the 11 or 9 kilometers or something. I did it around 9 hours, like the round trip, and it was
Mm.
like, I mean, usually it takes more time than that. I mean, professionals do it in like 5 hours, but of course I'm not at that level. I mean, I'm talking people that actually do it all the time. And I
Mm.
was like, for the first time that I did it, I was like, shit, that was a pretty good time actually. So
That is
I
pretty
I
good,
I, I,
yeah.
wor- I, wor- really wanted to do it more actually. So, and actually, this guy that you mentioned, he did. He was doing Everest, and he was doing it without extra oxygen, and he was only shorts and boots.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he twisted his ankle or something on the way up, like when he was like 1 kilometer away, like from the summit, and he have to get down.
Wim's a mad cunt. He like yeah, he did Everest pretty much most of it in just his shorts. And
Yeah, and without oxygen.
yeah. He's a different level of human, you know, and
Yeah.
I love what he shares with the world. And you know, I would be lying if I said to you that the cold thing that I do or the breathing thing that I do wasn't any inspiration from him. Like it absolutely
Mm,
is, you know, and I very much respect his body of work. And I like how because what's good about it and what very much attracts me to it is I'm someone who doesn't trust the system. You know, I'm
mm,
someone like the older I get, the more I understand the system. The more I understand the system, the less I trust it and realize it doesn't really have my
mm,
best intentions in mind.
mm,
And by the system, what do I mean by that? Just for clarification, I mean the food system, the medical
mm,
system, the political system, all of those, everything. That's
mm,
the way I look at the world. And in the last few years, that has become a lot more clear to me. So, what I like about, say, what a guy like Wim Hof is doing is the fact that he's putting things out there where you can use nature to help yourself and enhance your own life, enhance your own
mm,
capabilities free of charge without needing the system. The only system you need is nature. And I fucking love that.
mm.
The older I'm
Yeah.
getting, the more and more I'm drawing towards that. So I very much appreciate that kind of thing. You know, the more I can find things like that, you know, because you got to understand the best things in this life are already free of charge, and we already have access to them. You know, like look at mushrooms,
Mm,
for example. I don't do a lot
yeah.
of, like I haven't done psychedelics in quite a few years, but that's a perfect example of something that has tons of benefits, although it can also fuck you up if you do too much.
Mm.
But has tons of
Yeah, I mean,
benefits,
it's just
but
know
it's
exactly how
free.
to do everything and learn. It's not just to venture. A typical example of that is about this movie from Into the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
This guy that decided to move and completely to Alaska, and yeah, he was not really prepared for that. So it's actually a complete process. Like you need to, it's a lot to learn, and even more for us that we don't really live completely in those kind of like circumstances. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I respect a lot about like, for example, indigenous people that they know a lot about things that I mean that we have absolutely no clue about it. And the fun fact is, now that you said about the system, we live in a system that is designed for us to fail, not to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, if you see, we have so much stress, we have so much. Uh, we get so grumpy really easy here, and we're just going to work, and we are probably just because it rained a little bit today, we are just bitching about that. And that's something that is quite of interesting when I actually been in those in places like, for example, in India, for example, that I met people that have like almost nothing, and they were like laughing and quite of like really positive, and I was like, damn it, and these people have it way more rough than what I do, and these people is pretty cool. Like, I mean, and
Yeah.
here in Sweden, you're just going to work, sitting on the train, doing absolutely nothing with your cell phone, and many are just already angry about something, or many people are depressed, many people have anxiety, and it's
Mhm.
like it's a complete different thing. So I feel like actually, honestly, this society and system is designed for us to fail, not to succeed, and many people are blind to see that actually,
Well, it is.
unfortunately.
It is. And listen, just for the sake of clarification, there is no single doubt that we are in the most privileged time in history to be a part of humanity, because
Exactly.
out of all of the creatures that you could have been, you're the creature that gets its own rights. I mean, I don't literally believe in human rights because it's not a real thing. It's just a
Mm.
concept that we have,
Yep.
same as many other things that we have. But just the fact that you do have that, it's a great thing. Like you get to have the easiest way to access any resources, things like
Mm.
that. So I'm not complaining about that. And then just the other day, I was on a scooter in Norway. I was on the scooter, and then I'm just using my phone on like Google Maps, and I'm going like wherever the fuck I want. And I was like, this is fucking great. This is like
and
totally a privilege. Imagine just getting on a random scooter that's not even yours.
and you just said something that I feel and I wish many people will understand, because I'm so tired about that concept of fuck the modern world. Many
Yeah.
people come up with that. I was like, you're fuck the modern world, say writing it on Facebook, in your iPhone.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, okay, I mean, like, what is right now. I was like, okay, if you should have studied a little bit of history, you will have figured it out that the people back then, well, didn't have it as twice, as half as good that you're having it right now. You will probably have died at max 35 years old, 30. If you reach 40, you're already an elder. Everything could have killed you, since a single cough, or or a war or something, unless you were from the royalty, that it was like the less of the top 1%. So
Exactly.
it's
Like
like,
babies, like most of them don't even make it. And
yeah,
it's
exactly. And
I
many
agree
people
with
come
you.
up
Yeah.
like, no, I mean, like, I mean, like, how is, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's, we are far from perfect, as I said, and I don't want to contradict myself. Like, I mean, the system that we live these days is actually designed for us to fail, and actually only a few succeed, because that's actually quite of like a mafia, saying it that way. That's what I always says, like. And many people will get angry about my comment. I mean, even when it gets a little bit about into politics, that I don't want to do it, but I said, like, honestly, the aside of religion, in a way, those countries that have the lowest taxes on alcohol are countries that are designed to make people stupid, because they just want you drunk all the time. It's like, when you're drunk, we are conquering the world. So keep partying and then complaining about something naive. Well, actually, we are getting up. So it's like, I mean, many people don't think about that concept. Like, I mean, many people have. I mean, talking mostly about in the metal scene, many people have the Motley Crue effect. Think that they can live partying all the time, but it's like they don't see in the big picture. Like, I mean, yeah, you're partying all the time, and then you complain about the government, dude. Really?
Hmm.
It's
I
like,
I
if
I
you want
love
to
that you
change the
mentioned
world,
that.
start with yourself.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because this is exactly my thinking. And listen, for clarification, I'm not about to go from a holier than thou kind of approach. That's not my
Mm,
thinking. I don't judge people. I say do what the fuck you want to do. But
mm,
that what you just said there is precisely the reason why I no longer drink alcohol. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I don't watch porn, and I don't own a Netflix account. And and it's not to say that I think that all of these things are wrong and people who follow them are pieces of shit. No, 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 no. That's not what I think.
Exactly.
What I've rejected in them is the realizing that the effect that each one of those things could have on me. And I realized that most of these things, like, this is the thing with modern society. It's a double-edged sword. And sometimes one side can be a little bit sharper than the other, but the point is that we do get all these accessibilities in life. We have access to all these things that we want. You and I wouldn't be able to have this conversation if it wasn't for the many,
Exactly.
many, many, many advancements that's happened through our time. And it would be the same for those listening to it right now. So we gotta take that into consideration. A lot of hard work has gone into that, but also at the same time, when we live in an era of having so many tools at our possession, we are also introduced consistently to things that hinder our growth and progression. Why? Because we're meant to stay in the system, to feed the system, and to keep it running. Like, for example, just if you really, I mean, this is very much conspiratorial, but it's one of them things that the more you pay attention to it, the more it kind of starts to make sense. But for
Exactly.
example, the seed oil argument, pretty much everything that you will buy from a supermarket that is not a pure ingredient has seed oils in it. And that means rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, vegetable seed oils. They're the fucking worst. And they're in almost everything, right? And those things, they destroy your gut microbiome. And your gut basically, a lot of your immune system actually comes from that. And then also, one of the very important things is 90% of your serotonin is created in your gut. And to think that we are all consistently, over time, exposed to food that is going to make us weak and depressed, or materials and contents that's put in our food that does that, it makes you think, why. And this is another thing as well, like, you can look at obesity, for example, and in the last 20 odd years or so, the number of calories that people consume hasn't actually changed that much. But what has changed? Well, seed oils are in fucking everything now. You buy anything, look at the back of the packet. Sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, whatever. They're always there.
Exactly.
And this is one of them things, and this is only one example out of many. You mentioned alcohol yourself. You look at cigarettes, and there's all these things that are just keeping us sick, like, in fact, forget about the physical ones. Social media, that's something that's fucking keeping us sick all the time, because it's, as well, as much as it's a fantastic tool for a lot of things, it taps into the worst parts of us as a society and as human beings. So if you want to keep people mentally sick and physically sick, well, then you can create systems that will profit off of that sickness. The big pharmaceutical industries, big tech, all these things. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's a cycle that very much feeds itself, which again is another reason why I am, whilst I don't want to just completely abandon everything and run to the woods and live on my own, because in a way I also see that as running away from responsibilities and problems, which is a cowardice thing to do. I also think that this is why I appreciate finding things within nature, such as cold exposure, such as breathing, such as fasting, such as exercise, such as all these things that can actually have a far more beneficial impact on us, and they pretty much don't really cost anything either, other than effort.
Exactly, and that's the thing that many people don't want to put up in general when they figure out how, like, how, like, that it requires, like, effort, motivation, and everything. People just want to take it easy and complain.
Just like exactly the point you made earlier, everyone wants to have the validation, but no one wants to do the work. People just want to take a pill and get the results, and then that's it for them. And that's just not how things work in this lifetime.
Exactly. That's how it is, unfortunately, and yeah, that's what I strongly believe. Like, I mean, some days I wake up in the morning and I say like, why the fuck I'm doing this? Or I have my doubts in life as well. Like I think sometimes like shit, should I not? Uh, but I always think as well like, hey, life is about. I want like the day I die, they say this guy did a lot.
Well, I'm sure people just, you don't have to die. I'm sure just people listening to this podcast will already think that. But yes, I get your
Yeah,
point, man.
and I have talked with people that is like twice my age. I'm 35 right now, and
Uh,
I have met people that is like over 60s, and they have told me like, you have done so much in your life that I feel bad for myself that I haven't done anything like you. Like,
hmm,
I was like, well, it's not really a competition,
yeah.
but you grow in different ways. You learn a lot. You change perspective. You be more tolerant to certain situations. You grow as a person. You grow spiritually as well. Learning from different cultures, learning from different things, pushing yourself the boundaries, suffering a little bit about for things. I mean, I always push it the limit. I always push it the limit, and I do the same with art in general. Like, I don't, I was just talking not long ago with another guy. It's I don't know after the photo session with Ulskap, like, what is gonna come now, like a nuclear bomb in the photo session or something, because that was a lot of fire. So
Yeah.
I always push the limits. Unconsciously, because as I said, life for me, life starts when the comfort zone ends. I cannot really take a trip. I have traveled 30 countries around the world right now. And when I mean travel, I don't mean like just get there and go to a bar, sit down, and that's it. I've been exploring the countries and stuff, and for me, it's like I always pushing and pushing, like to learn more and yeah,
Life
see
starts when
what the life
comfort
brings.
zone ends.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to. I live on that actually, and I
That's
like it.
gonna be the name of this episode now. I love it too much. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's nice. That's great. Yeah, because it is. I've never been, for example, as I said, like I have. For me, such I see it such as a waste of time. Like for example, when people travel, sit on the beach and stay there just like all day long, drinking a beer or a piña colada, and eating and doing absolutely nothing else like that. I just look at that and I say like, what a waste of time.
Mhm.
Honestly, you travel to a place that have such a beautiful nature, and you just sit on the beach, wasting your day completely there. Do something else.
Yeah, but many people don't know
Huh?
what to do, and the world usually, the point where you start to grow is where you seek those things. So, what the world and the
Yeah,
system tries to do is throw you things where you can put your energy into them so you don't go and actually really do something. Does that make sense?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like that can be
exactly. That's what it
anything,
is.
It can
Exactly. In
be,
general, exactly. It can be anything. Uh,
yeah.
as I said, I have done it traveling. I've been doing hiking. I mean, I've been doing with kayaking. I have done it in aviation. I have done it in many different things. I always push myself to the limits. Like so, that's how it is. Who knows what is gonna be next? But always.
And I look forward to both of us pushing ourselves when you visit here and we try and go climb a mountain in Scotland, yeah?
Yeah, Scotland or whatever other place could be, let's do it. I'm always
Yeah.
up for it. And unfortunately, I don't really do it with many people because not many people share the interest, or those that share the interest, unfortunately, haven't really worked out well. But I'm always up for when someone really is up for it, and you're a dedicated guy. So let's make it happen.
Fuck yeah, man. Let's do it. Let's do it. I love it. Christopher, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast tonight, man. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I was looking forward to it, but it's absolutely exceeded my expectations, man. Love
Well,
hearing about your experiences,
thanks so
everything
much.
you've been through, what you're doing, and your connection with arts and the underground, but also on top of it, the big lessons and the values in life. I highly appreciate this, man. So thank you for jumping on.
Yeah, thanks so much, and I hope people will stay and listen to the conversation because it's pretty long.
That's where the good stuff happens. You can't do something
Yeah,
like this in 5 minutes in some fucking Q&A format.
exactly.
So
Thanks so much for your time and for the invitation. It means a lot.
absolutely, man. The pleasure's mine. Where can people come and check out your work if they don't already do? And what's the best thing, the best way for them to get in touch, check out what you're doing, and if you have anything coming up that you'd like them to keep an eye out for?
Well, the main way is through social media, Facebook and Instagram, through my account NecrosHorns, or I have that's mostly for the music art in a dark approach, like what I do in general. And when it comes like to cultural and my travel journeys and stuff, I have another Instagram account that I decided to separate from NecrosHorns because I feel that the approach is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
That is called c.dean photography. That's in Instagram. And yeah, I always sharing about my experience, like traveling and stuff, like around the world. So through my photos. So those two more, those yeah, that's the main way actually to find me. And if someone feels like asking a question or something, always welcome. Just send me a text, and I try. I try always to answer to everyone.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, there you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. Christopher, once again, thank you so much for being here, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to everyone else listening to the podcast, if you've made it thus far, we thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. This is probably one of my favorite episodes so far. So, fuck yeah. And yeah, we'll see you
Cheers,
guys.
man.
Yeah. See you guys on the next episode of Iblis Manifestations, people. Bye bye.